Happy Wednesday, everybody. I'm sports producer Scott Pennyman here with sports director Bailey Burmaster. Bailey, how you feeling?
I'm feeling great. It's Wednesday, getting through the week. It's a busy time of year, but that's what we like to hear in sports. So I'm feeling good. How are you feeling today?
You know what? I'm feeling all right. Got a chance to go out and do some high school previews that we'll have later. So I actually cannot complain. And when I look at these topics we have to talk about today,
We have some fun ones.
I love them. So I'm just ready to get to it.
All right, well, let's hit number one.
Trouble in Washington, right? Pinch me if you've heard that one before, right? So it appears that, according to Yahoo Sports, which I have right in front of me right now, so Washington Commanders players, went into head coach Ron Rivera to complain about new offensive coordinator Eric Bieniemy maybe being a little bit too worked up. They don't like his intensity. I guess they're really not used to it. So they kind of
They're not used to winning either.
Right. Right.
So,
and Bieniemy actually comes from somewhere that won.
A historic, very good offense with Patrick Mahomes, Travis
Right.
Kelsey, you name it. 5 years, I think he was there, was
Yeah.
passed over for some head coaching jobs. I mean, this is a very, very solidified offensive coordinator. I didn't even let you finish. I just started getting on the
go
box
for it.
because
Go for it.
I find this so soft.
I'm going to go ahead
So
and let Bailey
soft.
cook. Go ahead.
Quite frankly, I mean, Washington has been a team that has struggled. They don't have a quarterback. It's a competition between Jacoby Brissett and Sam Howell, I believe. And correct. But here's my thing is I know Jacoby Brissett, after covering with the Browns, is not someone that's complaining about Eric Bieniemy's nature when coaching. And, something that I thought was really interesting, they said he was just very I can't remember the exact word they used in the article, but it was like over the top and direct. And a couple players went to Ron Rivera to talk about it and address it. And he was like, well, you guys should go, which I also agree with Ron here, that he said, go talk directly to Eric Bieniemy. Why are you talking to me? Which I could not agree with that more. If you have an issue with one person, go directly to the source. Stop going around to try and get a roundabout answer to this. The other thing I find it really interesting is you've been a losing club for years now, and there's a coach that's probably coming in, lighting a fire, trying to change the culture, and who are you to sit there and say, oh, this is a little much? I hate that. I absolutely hate it. And I think of Eric Bieniemy knows what's good. He won't change much. He'll maybe explain to them why he is the way he is and what he's trying to do so they better understand. But I do think it's a culture that needs a little bit of a shock. And, even Tyreek Hill tweeted, like, EB is one of the coaches that's always going to ride for you. Like, he wants the best for you, and that's why he's riding you hard. And I was told when I was playing that my coach said, if I stop yelling at you, that is the day you should quit, because it means I've quit on you and you no longer have any potential. So that's how I feel about that.
Yeah, I think you pretty much summed it up right. I think when you start thinking about what the Washington Commanders have been as an organization, probably a bottom 3 or 4 organization in the last 20 years or so. Right down there with the Browns, Lions.
Mm-hmm.
They've kind of been down there. So, yeah, I think what this does is it gives you a lot of a window, a lot of insight into what to a losing organization, into why they've been losing so much. It's because they don't have that winner's mentality. And when a guy who comes from a winning organization, who knows what good football looks like, who knows what good habits looks like, comes through the door and tries to sort of change things, because I'm pretty sure when he arrived, he saw, oh no, this ain't right. This is we have to move a lot of these things around, and it was met with resistance because a lot of those guys are just built. They've learned to be losers, and so that's part of why you bring in an Eric Bieniemy. And I made a prediction when they brought in Eric Bieniemy there as offensive coordinator. I don't think that was just bringing him in as an offensive coordinator. I think when you look at Ron Rivera's health and everything and kind of what that situation has been, they haven't been doing a lot of winning either. I wonder if he was kind of brought in to kind of be
An audition for the head coach?
an audition for the head coach. I wonder if they feel like if things don't really go right to start the season, is he going to move up into that head coaching spot, almost like a head coach in waiting? So, yeah, I think that their feeling is wrath. And I don't think Ron Rivera is going to stop him. I don't think the front office is going to step in and stop him. When a guy comes in who knows what winning looks like, you have to let him do his thing.
Yep. Yep. No, I totally agree. And I think maybe not a great start for EB in Washington, but I'll be eager to see how it progresses.
I mean, when you look at it, just like, I guess my last little bit here, when the quarterback situation is Sam Howell and Jacoby Brissett, I don't know that you're not necessarily being set up for failure, because I don't think you're going to get a whole lot of wins out of either one of those guys next season.
I'll say I won't. I'm not like saying Jacoby Brissett's going to change the quarterback game, but he can win you enough games to be a competitive ball club. You saw that with the Browns last season. Now, you could argue the Browns have a lot more pieces there. Probably do. Probably true. But I also think Jacoby Brissett is such a great locker room guy that he's going to try and light a fire under people, too, because who likes losing?
I remember a guy told me last year, with a guy who was an Indianapolis Colts fan, when we were when he knew at the time I was a Browns fan. He knew Jacoby Brissett was going to be the quarterback for most of the year last year. So he was kind of briefing me on what to expect from Jacoby Brissett. He's like, look, just be prepared, right? When Jacoby Brissett's your quarterback, a lot of promising drives are going to end in field goals. Or so,
Unless you have a kicker who can't make those either.
right. So, hey, look, that would be a situation to keep an eye on, right, as the season goes along,
Yep.
because who knows what's going to go down in Washington. I don't think much winning, but, we'll see. So let's jump to a winning organization real quick.
Okay.
The Atlanta Braves, right?
Let's do it.
So a lot of things were going around. Reading here on MLB.com, they really kind of went in depth with some of the reasons that basically I said when the season started, but I don't like to pat my own back a little bit, right? So I said this is one of the deepest lineups, one of the best lineups I've seen in a long time. So MLB.com also feels that the Braves lineup is one of the deepest ever. I got some thoughts about that, but you want to go first?
I will say this. I think all this talk is great and it's a little bit warranted, but I think it's way early. I don't like these discussions until the season is over. Everyone keeps saying the World Series is the Braves to lose. They should win the whole thing. On paper and how they're playing offensively and how they're stacked, I mean, they're 9 spots Michael Harris, right? And he's batting
tough.
better than a big percentage of the league. Like, it makes sense. I understand why we're having these discussions. But I think what's hard for me is nothing matters once you get to postseason. Like, you know what I mean?
That's true.
And what are you going to do in the postseason? Can they take it all the way? Example, you can sit here and say this team is so stacked and they make it to the postseason and are out way early than everyone expected. And now you're saying they're the biggest failure of the season. So
Yeah.
I understand it's warranted. I think Matt Olson has skyrocketed this season. I mean, he's chasing the Ribby record right now, right? So
he's going
that's 100, I think, is what it is right now. They're a fun team to watch, and they have a deep, deep lineup. It's wild. Everyone talks about it, no matter who they're playing. But it's early, and we haven't even hit the postseason yet.
That's true. That's so true. And look, I mean, when you start thinking about deep lineups, yeah, I mean, I like this lineup a lot, but there's been some really good lineups over time. So I don't know if I would necessarily call it an all-time deep lineup. Look, you're looking at a fan here of what used to be the Cleveland Indians 1995 lineup when I was a kid, man. And from 1 through 9, I mean, they had Manny Ramirez hitting like 7th or 8th on that lineup, and Jim Thome was down there. Those are like Hall of Fame caliber players that are 7th and 8th. So, yeah, I mean, I've seen some really good lineups in my time. But when this season started, I sat here on this show and I said, I believe the Braves have the deepest lineup in baseball. And I believe that's going to be the reason that's going to keep them in it in the World Series hunt. But you're absolutely right, because the Braves were playing really good ball around this time last year, and then when the playoffs started, they ran into a Phillies team that got hot, they caught fire, and they knocked them. Knocked them out in the first round. So yeah, I mean, I think with baseball it's just so tricky, because you could be playing the best ball right now in July, and then September rolls around or October, and you run into a team that has it rolling, and they'll send you home in 5 games.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, I think it is. I think what you worry about with the Braves a little bit, but I guess I don't know if worry is the right word. Are they maybe peaking out a little fast? Are they playing their best ball a little too early?
And baseball's ebbs and flows. Everyone knows that. You get hot, you get a little cold to warm up to just get hot again. We still have a ways to go before we sound any type of alarm or we celebrate. So we'll see how it all plays out.
All right, so I wanted to hurry up and wrap up on that topic. Not because I wanted to hurry up. Obviously, I love talking about the Atlanta Braves. They're a fabulous baseball team. I wanted to talk more, but I knew when I saw this Johnny Football, Johnny Manziel topic, I knew this one was going to last a while. Right?
Oh, we're going to get into it. I don't know about you, Scott, but last night I watched the whole thing and I could not take my eyes off of it for the entire hour and 12 minutes or whatever it was, however long. All fascinating and wildly bizarre.
So I know you look, I mean, I certainly could talk a lot about Johnny Manziel and what he's been, because obviously he was drafted by the team I root for, and that was a disastrous tenure there, right? Uh, but you're pretty plugged in on Johnny too, right? I mean, so
Okay,
what's wrong with this dude?
There's an old saying that if you don't know who you are before fame hits, you'll lose yourself to fame. And this is what happened to Johnny Football. I'm going to sit here and be blunt. I think a lot of this blame, at some point you have to blame him a bit for not taking any accountability. But I think his parents severely failed him as a kid, as an adult, a teenager, as a kid in college. So for people who don't know, I'll kind of detail the documentary. So spoiler alerts ahead.
Go ahead.
Prepare yourselves.
I'm all good.
Okay, so he kind of went to a high school that was very military-like, in the sense where they would be at weight training at 5, go straight to classes, football immediately after, study, go home, do it all again. Started playing quarterback, popped off, was breaking all these records in Texas high school football. Doesn't get too recruited, probably because he's pretty small. I mean, he's 5'10" and not very thick.
Low guy.
But, I mean, he could run and he could throw. And goes to Texas A&M. And I think it was a little bit of, oh, I can do whatever I want. And no one's ever told him no at home either. So he starts drinking and partying. We all kind of know the party Johnny Football. The thing I loved about this documentary is they bring in Cliff Kingsbury, who was his offensive coordinator at Texas M under Kevin Sumlin at the time. Yeah. And Cliff details one of the stories of they're in the thick of this SEC hunt. And if you remember the Alabama game, a huge, crazy Alabama game for him. But it was that week of practice, I'm pretty sure. Maybe it was Ole Miss game. I can't remember. Don't take my word for it. But Johnny had been out partying. They had a walkthrough the day before, and Johnny didn't show up. So Cliff tells one of the players, no, you need to go get him, and he needs to be out here. I don't care if he's puking. He needs to be out here. Drags him out there. He's sweating going through this walkthrough. And Cliff kind of said, hey, man, I'm not trying to tell you what to do, but we're in the thick of this, and you can keep doing this as long as you play lights out. And sure enough, he played lights out. And I remember when I was in college at the time, I was at Oklahoma State, you heard stories of Johnny's partying wherever you were. Everyone knew about it. So that's what's really baffling when he begins his, we're skipping a whole part on his NCAA violations and autographs, but I want to go to the draft aspect because this is where it gets very interesting. He signs with an agent, EB, who was also, I think, Cliff Kingsbury's agent, a bunch of people's agents, and EB tells Johnny, listen, give me 2.5, 3 months of training, no drinking, no smoking, get to the combine, pass this physical and this drug test, and we can maybe get you a first rounder. But there's a plan to be a first rounder, and if you don't execute it, you're not going to go in the first round. So the documentary says Johnny does it up until the night before the NFL combine. He goes to a party in the hills and gets wasted and does drugs, calls his agent and tells him, hey, I messed up. The agent then calls his parents and tells his parents that they should fake a heart attack and they have to check into a hospital just to delay Johnny Football's NFL Combine experience so he can get 12 more hours to hopefully clear this drug test by hydrating and whatnot. Wow. And he's also a 5'10" quarterback. That is wild. And I can't remember what exactly they did, but they did delay it and he was able to get there, and it was just, that was one thing where I'm going, okay, but apparently his interviews went really well at the combine. He then does a private workout for the Browns, and this is what I find absolutely fascinating, and Scott, I'm so sorry you were a Browns fan because you deserve better, but this is how it went down. They do a private workout for the Browns, and I guess they had been partying the night before, Johnny and these receivers that were going to do workouts. None of the receivers could show up because they were too hungover. Johnny shows up, and the GM goes, okay, well, where's the receivers? And he goes, no, we're good. And he had his agent and his lawyer run routes during this workout. And the Browns still drafted this guy.
Well, I think that tells me a lot of things. But to me, you read that off, and most people are going to look at that like, wow, this Johnny kid is kind of crazy. I look at that as the ineptitude of the Cleveland Browns. I mean, to basically
ignore so much.
all these things that you saw from Johnny Manziel, all these signs, and still take him in the first round. Now, granted, that was an all-time bad draft, not just in Cleveland Browns history, but in any NFL history. When you look at the Browns had 2 first-round picks that year. They took Justin Gilbert with the first pick in that draft that year, and then they took Johnny Manziel with the second. That had to be one of the worst combination of first-round picks I
saw
think
someone,
anyone has had ever.
I'm curious here, and I'm not saying the Justin Gilbert pick was by any means a good pick, but someone said that the Johnny football pick was better than the Justin Gilbert pick, and I don't know how you can say that.
Man.
I don't know how you can say that.
I mean,
I get
it's
Gilbert
a tie. They
was
both lose.
Here's the thing. I get Gilbert was a bust, but Johnny football off the field, respectfully, was a loser before they ever drafted him. You knew exactly what you were getting off the field, and they still drafted him. And it all came to a head when he didn't show up for a game because he was partying in Vegas with a wig and mustache on. That poor Browns team. Joe Thomas deserved better.
Look, I saw the first game he actually started against the Cincinnati Bengals. That was one of the worst performances I've ever seen by a starting quarterback in NFL history. I mean, I just look at that, and there has to be college football quarterbacks right now that would have been more prepared than he was in that first game. I mean, not only was he just bad, like you've seen quarterbacks be bad before in their first start because they haven't really adjusted to the speed of the game because everything. That was one of the worst performances because he looked like on no play ever that he ran did he look like he had any clue on what to do.
And this is I'll kind of end my rant on all of this. There's a lot of people, coaches, his parents, just people around him who failed Johnny, and I sympathize for him for that because he deserved better as a human. But there comes a point in time where you have to be accountable for yourself if no one else is going to do it and no one's coming to save you. And you are accountable for your actions and how you treat people and those consequences. And it's sad to see his downfall because, I mean, no one can prepare you for the fame that college football brings, winning the Heisman, putting Texas A&M on the map, whatever you want to say. But at the end of the day, because things have happened to you, because you're dealing with things that are hard, it does not give you a right to act any certain way that isn't how you would want to be treated, essentially.
And it just amazes me that the Browns didn't see all these things. Right? like who in the world? What is their scouting department like? I mean, it's so easy to find information nowadays on a player. It's so easy to find out what guys are doing when they're away from the field. With so many resources you have to be able to pretty much know everything it is about a player. How is it that Johnny Manziel was around, had all these things going on, but apparently no one in the Browns organization either knew or cared? I mean, I'm guessing they knew and just didn't care. Or maybe they thought that his talent was so special that he'd be able to overcome those things.
It's the same thing in college, and it's the same thing in the NFL. Nothing matters if you're winning.
Man. And there was so much there to just be alarmed about. I mean, even at the least, you got you have this little small quarterback, and it just amazes me that they overlooked all those things and still took him in the first round. I mean, it's just wow. I mean, it underlines so much of what the issue has been with the Browns organization, and of course, just watching Johnny Manziel during that time. I mean, I had a front row seat. I covered that team. I was there. I heard so many stories about him. I didn't hear all the things that came out in this special and everything, but I just heard so many just bad things about him before that. It's just I can't believe anybody drafted him in the first 5 rounds, let alone in the first round. That's crazy to get fleeced that badly, you know.
I rest my case.
But let's go talk about a good quarterback. Yeah. All right. So the season premiere of Hard Knocks on HBO yesterday. They're following the New York Jets ahead of their 2023 campaign. I had a chance to watch Hard Knocks last night, and it was all right.
It was all right. So immediately what I thought was hilarious. And Scott, do you know that meme that's like the two Spider-Mans pointing at each other? They're like, oh, we're the same?
For
like,
sure.
Okay.
For sure.
So in the first like couple minutes when they open and Robert Saleh is having a team meeting, you can see glimpses of Aaron Rodgers, Alan Lazard, Billy Turner, Nathaniel Hackett, and then on the PowerPoint, it says all gas, no brakes.
Yeah.
That is the 2019 Green Bay Packers. To a T. They are running it back, but with everything Packers related. That's all they said in 2019 and 2020. Nathaniel Hackett's their OC. They don't even. There was this whole thing about Rodgers talking about the red zone, but they call it the gold zone.
Yeah.
That is a Nathaniel Hackett thing. It is the Packers. And I so desperately needed to fail because Robert Saleh is not original. He is also part of that tree that is Sean McVay, Mike McDaniel, Matt LaFleur. They're all buddies. So Robert Saleh is probably like, Matt LaFleur, you couldn't win a Super Bowl with this team, but I can. So we are going to run it back. We have to come back and talk about this whenever the NFL season is done. So I can sit here and say, it worked out, it didn't work out. I thought that was really funny. The other thing, Scott, are you familiar with the phrase, the kids are calling this day the ick?
No, what's that?
Okay, so
The ick.
women will say in dating that when things like a guy does something that's weird, they'll be like, ew, that gave me the ick. Okay?
Interesting.
Like, if it's just something weird. There was something in Hard Knocks that gave me the absolute ick. And correct me if I'm wrong, you watch this. The first 10, 15 minutes, every single Jets player is just raving about how amazing Aaron Rodgers is to his face. He's like, man, I watched you growing up. You're a legend. You're a GOAT. And Aaron Rodgers is just sitting there like, And all I could think about the entire time is the Packers handed Aaron Rodgers the keys to the castle, and look how that panned out. And the fact the Jets think this is going to be anything different is baffling. Now, I'm not saying Aaron Rodgers is a bad guy. I think he is a phenomenal quarterback and one of the best to do it, and I think he can turn a franchise around. But I also think it's weird that you can recognize how great he is, but when you're during a training camp practice, is that the time and space to sit there and be like, you're amazing, you're phenomenal, and he hasn't even played one game for you? And oh, by the way, you have a job to do? Because if I'm Aaron Rodgers, who we all know probably has a little bit of an ego, as most quarterbacks in the league do, he's going, I own you, and I am good, and I am better than you. Because he's also competitive.
No, I feel you, because I didn't act that way when I saw like Stephen A. Smith, who I like a lot on TV.
You're like, oh my God, dude, you're phenomenal.
No,
you're
it wasn't
amazing.
like
Great.
No, it wasn't like that. It was way more reserved, because that's more so my nature.
Yeah.
But it's funny you mentioned that when you brought that up, because that was actually what I was going to bring up, was just the amount of, and I get it, a lot of those guys are really young. They grew up watching Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
You know, guys like Garrett Wilson and Mecole Hardman, they've been watching Aaron Rodgers in the NFL their entire lives.
Okay, but this is you bring up a great point. Sorry, I don't want to keep interrupting.
No, go for it.
But Hardman was one of the guys. Okay?
UGA.
Yeah. Garrett Wilson, he talked about watching Rodgers, but he never really showered him in these compliments. He's like, obviously he's the greatest, but I grew up watching him and I want to be at that level. Made it about using it motivation for himself. I really liked Garrett Wilson in this. He was way, I already thought he was likable from my time covering him at Ohio State, but that just solidified it. I thought the energy was different in how Garrett Wilson was talking about it and Hardman was talking about it. And I think that's the difference of what I'm trying to show. There were a lot of guys doing what Hardman was doing in the sense of oh my God, fanboying to a standpoint. And I'm like, dude, you play in the same league as him.
Yeah.
Act like you've been there.
But we see that a lot in the NBA too with LeBron, right? I mean, guys will play with LeBron James and they'll go, man, I grew up watching you, or I was 4 when I was watching you play.
And those are people on other teams, by the way.
Yeah,
most of the time.
So yeah, I mean, so I get it. I mean, especially when you're, when you're playing with your
You
idol.
also
but I
don't see
think-
Russell Westbrook doing that,
No, 'cause
or James Harden,
No,
or
because
Kevin
those,
Durant.
No, because those guys are alpha dogs. I mean, that's what it is. When you're alpha dog yourself, yeah. Because I remember a story when Kevin Durant first got to the NBA. He is from the same neighborhood, Carmelo Anthony in Baltimore, and he thought about going and getting, Carmelo Anthony's autograph, but he said he looked down. And he's like, well, I thought about it for a second. And I said, I'm wearing an NBA jersey too, So I'm not. I don't.
And that's
right. I
And
don't
that's
have,
my case in point. You
Yeah.
you said it. You said those are all alpha dogs. So the only alpha dog on the Jets is Aaron Rodgers. Everyone's a beta.
Well, no, I think Garrett Wilson. He was rookie of the year last year.
No,
I think he has alpha dog
and that
mentality.
was the point.
Yeah.
Is I think he was someone of like, I'm here too, and I can be that great.
Right, I think
and,
he's that kind of guy, but not Miko Hardman. I mean,
No.
he doesn't have that kind of skill and
But
talent
act like
and
you've
ability,
been there. He's been in the league long enough.
He has, but he's not a dog, he's a dog. He went to UGA, but when I say dog,
Like he ain't got that dog in him.
No, he's not an elite player. I mean, Miko Hardman is a guy, so I mean, he's a regular.
Which is my
rotation,
thing is instead of showering Aaron Rodgers in compliments, why don't you watch what he does to become a better player?
Yeah, and I'm sure they hope that Zach Wilson is doing that too, because it looks like he was always in Aaron's back pocket on Hard Knocks and maybe trying to grow. But yeah, I think it's going to be a lot of that.
He
but
just
I do
needs to stay
think
away
that-
from the mommies.
Well, yeah, that too, right? Right. But I think with a lot of that, will go away. I think a lot of that was just the initial thrill of playing with a Hall of Fame player like Aaron Rodgers. I think once things settle down, I think some of those, more strong personalities like him, Quinnen Williams, guys like that who are stars themselves, I think they'll take their position, and I think they'll understand that Rodgers is there to all make them better, but maybe lift them. They were already a good team. They were a solid team before Aaron Rodgers came. All they were missing was that quarterback that could put them over the top. So I think, guys like Sauce Gardner, Garrett Wilson, those guys are some players, So I think, yeah. But I mean, guys like Miko Hardman, he's gonna act like a fanboy because he's Miko Hardman. He's not.
And all I'm saying is that gives me the ick.
Yeah, I get it. Look, I mean, I don't know if guys did that with Tom Brady when he went to Tampa. I don't know how that kind of went. I
Yeah.
mean, maybe they sort of had some of those same feelings, But look, Aaron Rodgers, make no mistake about it. And if you're somebody gave you the ick, I mean, kind of how the coaches were looking at him too. Even some of the coaches were like, "You see that throw?
Yeah,
That's
no,
why he's
that's
here."
what I'm saying. Act like you've been there.
Yeah, I get you.
A bunch of grown men fanboying over other grown men, that gives me the ick.
All right, calm down, Bill. It's okay. What's on your mind outside of Aaron Rodgers
know.
giving you the ick?
It's his teammates giving me the ick.
His teammates.
I have nothing on my mind. I'm all hopped up on Mountain Dew now.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what's on my mind real quick.
'Kay.
Falcons play their first preseason game this Friday. To me, it's going to be really interesting to see what Desmond Ridder does in these preseason games.
How many snaps does he play? We don't know. They still haven't said so. So we will see if he plays.
Well, he needs to play some. I mean, just given where he's at, I mean, he's
Yeah,
not
but
an
it's also the
established
first
veteran.
game of the preseason,
True.
and you're in Miami, so I don't know. We'll see. Everyone deals with it differently.
I mean, if he was an established pro, if he was already a all-pro, Pro Bowl guy, I would say he shouldn't play at all. But he's a guy, we still need to see what he can do. So I think that for where he's at in his career, I expect him to play at least one full quarter in this opening preseason game just so he can get some continuity with that offense and we can see a little bit more about what he's about, right? Mm-hmm. All right, well, they're giving us the wrap, so it's been good, Bailey. All right, hopefully you've calmed down now from
Good
Hard
topics
Knocks.
today.
Good topics today. We'll be back at you fast and furious tomorrow with Sports Tonight. Everybody, see you tomorrow.